everyone, and welcome to Kickstart Your Company's Conversations with Expert Entrepreneurs, If I Had Only Known. My name is Cheryl Scoffield, and I'm the follow-up specialist, prospecting master and mentor over here at Kickstart Your Company. Thank you for joining us to listen in and discover behind-the-scenes insights from an expert entrepreneur that just might save you hours of time and stacks of money. If you have any questions about business growth strategies to build your company, why not join the conversation? Send your questions to me, Cheryl, at kickstartyourcompany.com, and I'll find an expert who can give you the insight that you need to navigate past challenges. These conversations, they center around the question, what business growth strategies have you discovered along the way that you wish you'd known earlier? Because that knowledge would have made growing your business just so much easier. I love having these conversations because I want to find out what other successful business owners would have done differently to grow their business if they'd only known. So let's get started with today's conversation. You've put years into building your company, and now it's time to consider selling. But where do you start? If you're not sure what the next steps are, then you'll find today very enlightening, because during this conversation, a successful CEO who guides other business owners through the process of preparing to sell their company is joining us to discuss the 4 areas that you need to look at first. The person you're about to meet is an expert entrepreneurial business owner. His name is Eric Gilboord, and his company, WarrenBDC, helps businesses grow and sell their successful company. Welcome, Eric, to Conversations with Expert Entrepreneurs, If I'd Only Known.
Oh, thank you, Cheryl. I'm quite excited to be on your show. I've listened to some of your interviews, and I think your style and your approach is very refreshing and very informative for business owners, so thank you.
I'm excited to have Eric on the conversation because his specialty is working with business owners. He's helped hundreds chart their course through the often complex world of preparing to sell their company. I'm very interested to hear what you have to say today, Eric, because I've seen some of the results of your work.
Well, thank you. Well, our focus, as you know, is on companies that are at some point in the process of getting ready to sell their business. And typically, the folks that we're dealing with on a daily basis, they've had a really good run. They've had their business for 10 or 20 or 30 years. And interestingly enough, a couple of years ago, if you would have asked these same folks what their exit strategy was, they might have said to you, well, my children might take over the business, or I might sell it to my employees, or, I'm not concerned, somebody will come along and buy the business. And unfortunately, today in 2014, if you ask that same person the same question, their answer is, 3 years ago or 5 years ago. And you kind of say to them, what do you mean? And they say, geez, I wish I would have sold 3 years ago or 4 years ago or 5 years ago. And what I encourage business owners to do is to not find themselves in that position. And so what we do on a regular basis with our clients is we help them in 4 main areas. We help them with their sales, with their marketing, with their operations, and with their finance, because those are 4 of the key areas that you need to improve upon in order to make your business more saleable, if you will. And starting with sales, what we find is that many small and medium-sized businesses, they have a sales force. It's typically led by the owner of the business, and typically the bulk of the sales are actually from the owner. And regardless of how many salespeople they have, the rule of thumb is that 20% of your sales force is going to do 80% of the business, which raises the ugly question, what about the other salespeople who are responsible for kind of 20% of the business? And it makes you wonder why folks would allow themselves to be in that position. So one key area you have to look at is you really have to look strongly at your sales. You have to look at the management, and you have to look at the numbers and your expectations of the sales. The other side of it is the marketing side, and typically in most businesses, sales is on one side of the building, and if, in fact, they actually have marketing tends to be on the other side, and they don't really talk. And what we do at Warren Business Development Center is that we make sure that we prepare integrated sales and marketing programs. And by that I mean, our sales and marketing experts work together on a daily basis and speak to each other about all the details of a client's business so that everything is moving in sync, so it's moving in unison. Sales and marketing is working together so that you can, help to grow the business. So we would very much encourage anyone who's thinking about moving down this road of preparing their business to sell, that they make sure that their sales and marketing are working together. Another area is operations, and the expression, if it looks like a duck and walks like a duck and talks like a duck, it probably is a duck. And unfortunately, I've had many experiences and conversations with business owners, and even in the initial conversations, they can tell you, which areas of their operations are not working properly, and maybe some of the personnel that aren't working properly, yet they persist in just allowing that to continue going on. And they don't necessarily, face the situation where they need to make a change and actually go and make the change. And these are all things that are in your control as the owner of the business. It's up to you to act upon these things. Finance is another thing, and it's interesting. I mean, you can be a very strong company financially, but if the other issues aren't in place, then it's a bit of an uphill battle. And we're not financial experts by any means. I mean, our main focus is sales and marketing, but we do have associates that are financial experts that can help our clients get their financial business in order, because these are all the different areas, whether it's investors or buyers or anyone who's looking to do a merger with your organization or simply acquire your organization. In the old days, it used to be that they would just look at the finances and maybe they would look at the management team as well. But now they're looking at all these areas. They're looking at sales, they're looking at marketing, they're looking at the operations, they're looking at the personnel. They're looking at all the different aspects of the business before they decide to acquire it. These are all very, very key areas of interest for anyone who's looking at considering buying your business or even merging with you. The other thing that they're interested in many occasions is that the principal of the company, and that would be you, staying on over a transition period of 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 years, because you have a wealth of experience and contacts and knowledge about your business that clearly they can't just absorb overnight. So the next thing you have to think about is, you have to think about more than just yourself. While it may be your company, your business that you're getting ready to sell, you have to think about your customers. You have to think about your vendors. You have to think about your own employees and what's going to be best for all those folks. If you're going to take a business that you've had for 10 or 20 or 30 years, there's some wonderful relationships there. But oftentimes, there's definitely a feeling of responsibility, and key to really think about how the transition is going to impact the lives of all those other people. And then beyond that, you've got your own family, and while you may be thinking that you want to work till you're 80, or you may be thinking that you want to retire tomorrow, what I find fascinating is how often a business owner has not necessarily had the conversation with their spouse or with their children. I mean, I've run into far too many occasions where people still think that their children are going to take over the business, and when you say to them, have you actually asked your son or daughter or multiple children, whether they're interested in being in the business? And the answer typically is, well, no, I just assume they would. And most often these days, it's very rare that someone's next generation is going to take over the business. In the old days, maybe it happened a lot more often, but today it's extremely rare. And, the younger generation has their own ideas of what they want to do. And if they even did come into the business, again, they have their own ideas. And typically there's a little bit of a battle between old and new. And I like to suggest to the business owners that the best of both generations. Not everything the original generation says is right, and not everything the younger generation says is wrong. Typically you both have things to contribute to the business, so that's kind of interesting. In terms of the actual sale of the business, surprises me how often an owner, working with their spouse in the business. And they're working on a daily basis, working kind of in the business. They're not perhaps as often working on the business, but they're working in it. And they're certainly not necessarily talking about that day that will come when it's time to perhaps sell the business. And, I encourage folks to take some time and really just, it's as simple as, taking a piece of paper independently and writing down what your thoughts are of, kind of what you want to do with your life, assuming that you're going to sell the business. And a lot of the folks that are in this position are kind of boomer age, 60-ish, 55, 60, 65, 70, and they really need to sit down and come to terms with themselves as to what it is that they want to do with the rest of their lives. And then you should sit down with your spouse and compare notes and see if you're actually compatible, about what you want to do. I mean, your plan might be to just work the business until you can't work anymore because you love it. Your spouse's plan might be to travel around the world. And maybe there are ways that you can combine those things, because I've worked with several clients where they've transitioned, they've sold the company, or they've merged it with someone else, or actually in some cases their children have actually taken over the business. And what they've done is they've taken their position and they've moved it in some cases to more of a sales type role, and it allows them to travel around the world and actually do some sales in amongst the traveling and enjoyment of the retirement. And it's a lot less pressure, but it's kind of a nice way to keep your hand into the business and stay involved, but also kind of enjoy your, quote unquote retirement. And, we all know that a lot of people aren't retiring because retirement is kind of becoming an expensive word and perhaps a dirty word, and people want to keep working, but there's working and there's working. And if you can do things that you enjoy, I guess it ceases to become work. A lot of people that are, into that phase of their life find out very, very quickly that you can only golf so many times and you can roam around the house for only so long before your spouse kicks you out. And actually what a trend is that there are a lot of folks that are selling business in a year or two. They're buying new businesses or buying into businesses or starting new businesses. So there's a whole range of activities that are happening out there. The other thing is the concept of growing your business and running parallel paths. You can be growing your business and doing some of the things that we've talked about and addressing these key issues of sales and marketing and, operations and finance and whatnot, but at the same time working on your plan, to sell the business. You don't necessarily have to have a plan in place and then you start to grow the business. I mean, often what I've said to clients is that it's not a whole lot different than kind of fixing your house up. I mean, the thought of living in a home for, say, 20 or 30 years and then 5 minutes before you sell the home, you renovate and you put in a new kitchen and you paint and you put in hardwood floors and all that stuff so that somebody else can enjoy it. Well, fixing up your business is very similar. Why would you wait till the last minute to fix up your business? It doesn't really matter if you have an end time to sell your business. You should start today on fixing it and growing it and improving it and enjoying these changes and improvements that you've made to your business. And then it can run parallel, and you can start your process for selling, and you can, actually have a sell date. It doesn't really matter when it is. You're running parallel paths. You're improving the business. You're enjoying it, and you're doing the work that's necessary to sell. Because easy as you think it might be, and as many people as you think might be out there just waiting to buy your business, you're unfortunately going to be very surprised. It's a very tough market out there, and it's very difficult to sell your business, and it's really difficult to sell your business for what you actually think it's worth. There's your opinion because it's your baby. It's something that you put your whole life into. Somebody comes along and they don't have that emotional commitment, and their view of what you've accomplished and their view of what you have as a business can be very, very different than perhaps, what your view is.
Having worked in a lot of family businesses, I really think that a lot of what you have to say, and one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the Conversations with Expert Entrepreneurs today is because talking about a topic that very often is not to be talked about. It's the elephant in the room. I've worked with a lot of family businesses where they know, as you've said, that you know that there are issues, but no one really wants to talk about it because the person who started the business is a very strong personality, has a very strong vision in the beginning and during the course of building the business about where the company was going, and a lot of times it's built on their strength. So I think that as you say, it's very difficult because it is their baby. A lot of times when I go in to help those companies with their prospecting and trying to help them rebuild their business, because a lot of them have, taken quite a few hits in the last few years. A lot of times when I go in to try to help them to build their business, it's as you say, they have people in place, but no one really wants to do the prospecting. Nobody really wants to do the follow-up. It's a longer road. It's like what you're saying with selling your business. Prospecting and building your business back up to the level of maybe it was, or dealing with the issues that are preventing you from building that business are not things that they want to deal with. So typically when I come in, they don't have people in place to do that outbound calling. No one wants to do cold calling, as we call it, a new word, outbound calling. Working with them over a period of time, they have so many resources that are not, those assets are not being utilized effectively and to the full extent of what they could be. So our working together is perfect because the prospecting, the follow-up that I do works in so perfectly, the integrated marketing that you're doing, which is one of the reasons why I'm so happy to partner with your company, WarrenBDC, and why I've chosen to have my workshops, the Prospecting Mastery, at your location in Port Credit.
Yes, Cheryl. I mean, you're 100% right. I mean, what we found over kind of years of experience, and I guess what you found is the same, is that there are aspects of the business that are actually quite simple to fix, like the prospecting aspect of the business, and they really need somebody who has the real skill set like yourself in terms of follow-up. And it's not that it's difficult to do, obviously, if you have the right information and script. It's the quality of how you do what you do that is exciting for WarrenBDC to have you involved with our business, because the caliber of the work that you bring to the table is really what we're very excited about, and what we can do for our clients. We can impact their business without disrupting their business. We can impact their business in a great way, actually very, very quickly. We work together, we identify the target audience, we identify the list, and we make the calls. We say it comes down to three things. It's saying the right thing to the right person at the right time. With your help, we do that for our clients, and we can get a big lift in their business, because oftentimes there's gold in their existing customer list. There's gold in their prospect list. God knows there's lots of gold and diamonds, buried within all the businesses that they're doing business with. So I'm very excited to have you, Cheryl, involved with our organization.
Well, thank you, Eric. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are wondering how would they find out more information about how they could get started selling their business. So where would they go, Eric, on your website to get more information, first step information about how they can start the conversation with you?
Thank you for that question, Cheryl. They can simply go to WarrenBDC.com. So that's WarrenBDC, Bob, Dave, Charlie. And they can take the sellability score, which is a 13-minute free survey that turns out a 26-page report that gives you a nice overview of your organization over 8 main areas, and gives you an idea of, within the world of potentially selling your business. It's a very good starting point to figure out kind of what areas need improvement. The other thing is, what we find is that, we'll come in, we'll start talking with the owner of the business, and we'll get to some of the personal issues. We'll get to some of the issues of, we spoke about a few minutes ago in terms of, are spouses involved, are they not involved? And oftentimes, this is, it's the elephant in the room, funny enough. Even if family is working in the business, as you said earlier, it's the owner of the company, their baby, and oftentimes the children, the spouse, whatnot, or even siblings, brothers, sisters of the owner in the business, don't necessarily want to talk about what's going to happen. You've had a good thing going for a long period of time. sometimes people are just kind of afraid to broach the subject. And so what we do is, we sit in the boardroom with the owner and we talk about these kinds of subjects. And it really actually has nothing to do with sales or marketing or even operations or finance. It has everything to do with your personal goals and your personal ambitions and desires as the owner of the company. And what we find is that part of our initial conversations is business oriented, but a healthy part of the conversation is about yourself and what you want to do and how your family becomes a part of this or doesn't become a part of it. And everybody knows, anyone who owns a business understands the concept that their personal finances and their business finances tend to be intertwined. They tend to be integrated because, you write off the car and you write off this and when you're working with your accountant on a yearly basis, they're always taking into consideration your personal finances, your business finances. What a lot of people don't recognize is that just the aspect of where the company is going to go and what's going to happen to the company very much is at the heart of your own personal life. Do you want to give up the business? Do you not want to give up the business? I was chatting with someone yesterday, and he was telling me how his son had taken over the business, and he seemed a bit protective about things, and he was still going in and helping with the business. And you hear that story often, and I was assuming that the son was maybe in his 20s, maybe 30 years old, and had at some point recently taken over the business. And, I just asked the question. I said, just by the way, how old is your son? And he said 50. And I said, because he thought, I said, well, what are your son's plans in terms of the future? And he said, well, he'll probably stay with the business, like I have. And, this gentleman is probably 80 and, still works 5 days a week. He takes off 4 or 5 months a year, but, the rest of the time he's working in the business. And his assumption is that his son will simply lead the same life. And I said, well, with all due respect, he's 50 years old, and, a typical 50-year-old, this generation is not looking to work until they're 80 or 90 years old. He may be just thinking about retirement. Have you talked about this? And the gentleman said, you're right. We haven't discussed it. He didn't really know what his son's intentions were. And to me, these are really, really super important issues. I mean, this is your life. This is, more important than business is your quality of life and your enjoyment of life and your enjoyment of your family. We're very, very aware that whatever it is that we help you with and whatever advice we give you in the form of getting your business ready to sell, that we're very, very concerned about the personal side of the issue. So sometimes we're in a boardroom with a family that's running a business or a couple that's running a business, and we act more like therapists than we do like sales and marketing people because, you have to recognize that you're dealing with human beings and you're dealing with people's lives and you're dealing with personalities and emotion. And oftentimes, especially at this point in the life cycle of a business, emotion becomes a huge element in terms of decisions that are made. And again, not unlike you've lived in a house for 30 years and now all of a sudden you're going to sell it. You watch on the television shows where somebody's getting ready to sell their home and you foolishly say, well, we don't want the person who comes in to buy it to make any changes. We don't want them to paint the house. Well, you have no control over that. So if you're going to sell your business and you have certain things that you think you want to remain the same, sorry, I got news for you. You're not in control of that. If that's going to be an issue, then you need to confront these things before you go down the path of getting ready to sell the business. I mean, at the end of the day, you want to sell the business for as much as you can, profit-wise. You want to make sure you take care of your employees. You want to make sure if any of your family or friends are part of the business during the transition or after, you want to make sure they're taken care of. You want to look after your customers and you want to look after your vendors. There's a whole lot of responsibility here, and it's a very, very exciting time. I actually know a serial entrepreneur, very, very successful gentleman, and he sold one of his large businesses, and he actually took it upon himself to take some of his key people from the company who were, basically retiring out of the company that he had just sold, and he mentored them and actually financed them into new business ventures so that they could open up their own companies. And what a beautiful, beautiful way of transitioning, help your people move from your company into the next stage in their lives. And I thought that was just a beautiful sentiment, and that's the kind of thing that I think that's what it's all about. It's maybe a little bit less about money and a little bit more about doing what's right and improving the world and making the whole experience a good experience for everyone.
Absolutely right, Eric, because I think that quality of life for yourself and for the people that you've shared quite a number of years with likely is an important thing to think about, a quality of life for everyone that's involved. It has been wonderful having this conversation with you. Thank you for joining me, Cheryl Scoffield, the follow-up specialist, for conversations with expert entrepreneurs, and my guest, Eric Gilboord of WarrenBDC. Today's conversation has certainly been enlightening. And for all of you who are listening in today, a link of the recording will be emailed to you. If you have any questions whatsoever, remember you can contact me at cheryl@kickstartyourcompany.com. And please join me on the first Wednesday of the month at 12 noon for another Conversations with Expert Entrepreneurs.